Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6th YouTube session of the 11th fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. I'm your moderator for today. Today's YouTube session is also our 23rd Read for Pixels live stream author panel. The Pixel Project created these multi-author panel sessions to be an accessible resource for writers interested in writing about female characters and approaching themes such as misogyny, sexism, gender, and violence against women with depth, empathy, and accuracy. So we have a really interesting topic for today's panel, solving the patriarchy, female detectives and feminism in the crime and mystery genre. And we have an amazing panel as well. So here to join us are three extraordinary authors whose work not only entertains but interrogates. We have Delia Pitts. She is a former journalist, university administrator, and US diplomat with a PhD in African history from the University of Chicago. Her newest book, featuring Black PI Vandy Myrick, Death of an Ex, was published by Minotaur Books in 2025. She also has published several acclaimed short stories, including The Killer, which was selected for inclusion in Best American Mystery and Suspense 2021. Delia is an active member of Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and Crime Writers of Color. Welcome, Delia.
Thank you.
And we have Laurie R. who's back. She's the best-selling, award-winning author of numerous beloved novels, short stories, anthologies, and works of nonfiction. She lives in California and writes historical mysteries set all over the world, including the Mary Russell Sherlock Holmes series. Hi, Laurie. Welcome back.
Hello.
And last but not least, SJ Rozan, who is the author of 18 novels and over 70 short stories, editor of 2 anthologies. She has won multiple awards, including the Edgar, Seamus, Anthony, Nero, Cavity, Japanese Maltese Falcon, and Private Eye Writers of America Life Achievement Award. In 2023, she won the Anthony Award for the latest crime anthology she edited, Crime Hits Home. Hi, SJ. All right, so aside from joining today's Read for Pixels panel, Delia, Laurie, and SJ have very generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have set up as perks for donors on our Rally Up fundraising page. So let me go through them. First, Delia Pitts. She will be giving away 3 different goodies. First is Delia Pitts' Death of an Ex bundle. This is for US donors only. Now, Delia has 1 Death of an Ex bundle for a donor in the US. It contains a signed and personalized hardcover edition of Death of an Ex plus 1 Death of an Ex bookmark. The second thing is a 45-minute Zoom call to be claimed by 1 Read for Pixels donor. Delia will be very happy to chat with you about the art and craft of writing, publishing, and books with you or your group. And the third thing is Delia has very generously donated 1 critique bundle for either a single author or a writing pair working on an English language work in the mystery or crime genre. So this bundle contains 1 written critique of the first 50 pages or the first 3 chapters of the donor's work in progress, 1 follow-up 30-minute Zoom video chat, during which you can chat with Delia about her feedback on the work in progress. And there's just 1 of this session available. So donate now to book a slot with Delia. So those are the 3 things from Delia. And let's go to Laurie. Laurie is giving away 4 things. First is Laurie's Knave of Diamonds bundle. This is for US donors only. These are carefully curated by Laurie herself. And they contain a signed and personalized hardcover edition of Knave of Diamonds, 2 exclusive 4x6-inch Knave of Diamonds art prints, that's the book, and 1 Beekeeper's Apprentice bookmark. And Laurie has 3 of these bundles, 2 UK edition bundles and 1 US edition bundle. Oh, that's nice. That looks so good. And the second thing is a chat with Laurie R. for donors worldwide. There are 2 Zoom chats to give away, a 60-minute Zoom call with a group or a 30-minute Zoom call with an individual donor. These are really high-value stuff. SJ Rozan. So SJ Rozan has 2 things. SJ Rozan's DE and LAO bundle. So the bundle comprises 1 signed and personalized hardcover edition of The Murder of Mr. Ma, winner of the Anthony Award for Best Historical 2025. There it is. such a cool cover. One signed and personalized hardcover edition of The Railway Conspiracy, and one signed and customized note from one of the main characters in the book. And SJ Rozan also she's also offering a 60-minute Zoom call session to be claimed by one donor. SJ will be happy to chat with you about the art and craft of writing, publishing, and books with you or your group. And SJ is a very in-demand writing coach, so hurry up and donate to get the Zoom call before it's gone. And finally, there's a bonus mystery book boxes. So Laurie has very kindly arranged for her UK and US publishers to donate mystery book boxes full of great crime and mystery reads by female authors. So we have Elson and Busby, Laurie's UK publishers, are offering one mystery book box for a donor in the UK only. And Penguin Random House, the US publishers, are offering 2 mystery book boxes for donors in the US. So there's so much amazing swag. You can, it's all up on our Rally Up fundraising page. And I think, so Jay has put up the links in the chat box, so you can just go there and get your hands on them. So before we start with the panel discussion, I just want to say that you, the audience, you can also ask the panel questions. Just make sure that you are logged onto your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box. It should be on the right side of your screen. And Jay, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read them out. Okay, so let's get on with the panel. I'm going to give a little introduction to what we're talking about today. So from the early days of quiet but brilliant sleuths to today's savvy and determined investigators, female detectives in crime and mystery, from Agatha Christie's classic Miss Marple to precocious and brilliant Nancy Drew and no-nonsense V.I. Warshawski, are truth-tellers, boundary breakers, and bold revolutionaries. In a genre that thrives on exposing what's hidden, these characters offer a lens into the realities of sexism, misogyny, and violence against women. They navigate systems that fail, confront power structures that harm, and in doing so, they reflect and sometimes reshape the world we live in. So today we're going to explore the evolution of the female detective, not just as a literary figure, but as a cultural force. We'll try and unpack how crime fiction can be a space for feminist critique, how female detectives catalyze conversations about sexism, misogyny, and violence against women, and how crime and mystery writers can craft women-centered narratives that resonate far beyond the page to inspire readers to start the conversation and take action about to stop violence against women. So let's begin with an overview of crime and mystery genre and the evolution of the female detective. Let's try and trace the female detective's journey. According to the H.R.F. Keating Award-nominated 2024 book Female Detectives in Early Crime Fiction, Ashley Bowden says that female detectives first appeared in crime and mystery novels and stories in 1841. That's a long time ago. And indeed, some of the most famous detectives in crime mystery are female sleuths, including Nancy Drew, Mary Russell, Precious Ramotswe. Over the course of almost 200 years, female detectives have clearly evolved from classic archetypes such as Miss Marple, who quietly bucks societal norms for women by conducting detective work stealthily, to today's complex and bold investigators like Cordelia Cupp, who happily shake things up to expose murders. Moreover, it seems more than coincidental that the rise of the fictional female detective, who are name famous only, came to prominence in the early 20th century alongside the rise of suffragettes. So do you see any parallels between this evolution of the female detective and the progression of the feminist movement in the real world since then? Let's go to Delia first.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this wonderful panel and your work on this extremely important subject. I really congratulate you, Anushya, and your colleagues. It's excellent. I'm very honored to be included in this group. I was going to take the timeline back a little ways and say that I think we can think about women as investigators in perhaps a broader way. And if we think about some of Jane Austen's stories, we think about the leading characters such as Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, who is distinguished in that book for being a woman of bravery, of insight, of courage within the context that she finds herself, a woman who is questioning her social boundaries. And I think some of those characteristics that we later see in well-defined private investigators or amateur sleuths who are women or police officers who are women can be found a lot earlier, perhaps even than the dates that you were setting as the start of the female detective properly defined. I also think about Louisa May Alcott and
Yeah.
her presentation of women in Little Women and in her stories as well, where she has all four of the young women, the girls of that family, but particularly Jo, who is the eyes through which we follow the story of Little Women, who is, I think, very much a model of what we would later see as an investigator, someone who is outside the boundaries of convention in a number of ways, who finds herself running up against convention in terms of what she desires for her life, how she sees her possibilities in the world. And I think we can look even in slightly broader terms to think about some of the origins of what we now see as the woman private investigator.
That's a very interesting take. Never thought about it like that. But yeah, it makes sense. What do you think, Laurie?
You know, it's always good to kind of start with definitions, isn't it? And this is something that I always run across of in discussions is, well, what do you mean by feminism? And I kind of think, well, basically, to my mind, feminism is if you do a job, you get paid the same if you're a man or a woman. I mean, that's the basic definition of feminism. And I think that that sort of attitude is, as Delia says, something that you find in strong women. There's sort of what they call, or the editorial world calls this strong women. Throughout history and throughout literature. So yeah, I think that it's a development. I think it could be that we are more aware of things now because we are more self-reflective and there's more dividing things up. The whole business of crime fiction is a fairly recent place on the bookstore shelves. That always before, the things that we think of as detective stories were sort of integrated with all the other literature. And it's only when it came to selling things in bookstores that you have a special shelf of crime fiction as opposed to capital L literature. And I think the same way with feminist literature. I don't think there's really much difference in having a strong woman detective or having a strong woman as a family story. The interest is in the woman and what she's doing in the world.
Okay. That makes sense. How about you, SJ? What are your thoughts?
These people are so smart. I think what Delia said particularly is really really interesting, because I was taking the question kind of as asked, and I didn't go back. I took the 1841 date as gospel, but I do think that the development of the female detective as such, private eye, the amateur and the cop, does follow the historical pattern in the sense that as women became more and more liberated from roles in the home, and this happened as in times of social upheaval, specifically World War I, and then again World War II. And as these things happened, women found themselves able to go out and do things they would not have been allowed to do by the dominant culture, but they were needed. And so while they were doing those things, they became able to do other things. And I also think that someone like Miss Marple, the great thing about Miss Marple is that her entire crime-solving ability was based on her ability to read people, which is something women are taught to do and have to do to keep ourselves safe in a way that men don't have to learn to do. And Miss Marple spent her entire career saying, he reminds me of the butcher's boy. Now, the butcher's boy, and that is a very female and feminist approach. At the same time, women were doing work for the Pinkerton and other private detective agencies that men couldn't do. That men couldn't go undercover in Long Beach. So that women had a whole other set of roles that they were learning. So I think that, and then people would read the books about women doing these various things and think, oh, look, women can do those things. And then the roles available to women would expand. And then there'd be more books about women doing those things. When you look at someone, I think Laurie made a point, when you look at someone like Amelia Earhart, she was not an investigator, but she was a hell of a role model for, wait, I didn't know women could do that, whatever that was. And so I think that, yes, the role of women in crime fiction has expanded as the role of women in society has expanded. And so here we are where we are now.
Yeah. So this brings us really nicely to my next question, talking about female detectives and feminism in the crime and mystery genre. Do you then see female detectives and your own female detective characters as feminist characters, even if they don't overtly identify that way in their stories? We'll start with Delia again.
Yes, I don't think that the terminology is not used in the world of Vandy Myrick, who is the central character in my new series. But I think certainly she sees herself, as Laurie mentioned, as someone who ought to get paid and the same as a man doing the same job, and ought to be treated the same as a man doing the same job. She's a boxer in addition to by avocation. She enjoys the sport, but she definitely sees that. I think she works for a female boss. Her boss is supported by the boss's wife, who is their administrative assistant. So she is surrounding herself with what I call a circle of resilience, who are women who provide her with guidance, support, insight, and help out with some of her investigation. So I think that these are perhaps hallmarks of what we could label as feminism. None of the characters speak in those terms. They don't use that language as they describe their lives, but I think it's appropriate to do so, and it helps us perhaps to think about their lives and their work in that way, although they themselves don't bring that language to the plate.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting that, the idea of accusing someone of being a feminist. Who was the I'm blocking her because she always offended me so much. The orange juice anti-feminist.
Anita Bryant.
Anita Bryant.
Thank you. She was the very definition of a feminist. She was hugely influential. She never stayed home. She, was always traveling, and she was this executive in this huge, and yet she claimed to be, anti-feminist. And you think, honey, that's not how it works. Just because you say I'm not the F word, it doesn't mean you're not. And I think that, most of the strong characters in here would, if they said, no, I don't think of myself as being a feminist, it's only because they didn't think of themselves in that way. I mean, it's not a role that they feel they have to step into. It's just they get on with their lives, which is the very definition of feminism. So I think that pretty much any character that you're writing that is, that is self-actualized and in charge of her own life is by definition a feminist.
SJ?
Yeah, I think that in my case, in terms of my original long run series, Lydia Chin is absolutely a feminist. Thinks of herself as a feminist, and has kind of a chip on her shoulder about it. She's the youngest of 5 children. The other 4 are boys, and there was a lot of girls don't do that when she was a kid, and she often finds herself pushing on open doors because she's so determined that she won't be held down, that she fights with people who aren't holding her down. So she absolutely is aware of herself as a feminist, and it's in her case a sort of triple thing because, well, quadruple thing. She's a woman, she's Asian, she's young, and she's small. So she's like, don't get in my way, boys. I'm here now. In terms of my other books, I would say that feminism is not. It certainly was not a word that was used in the 1920s, which is my new series. But the 2 strongest women, the 2 most obvious women, are the 2 in the Railway Conspiracy, Madame Wu and Feng, her assassin-trained helper, and they are definitely feminist in my definition. They are women who, as Laurie said, they're self-actualized. They know what they're doing. They know what they want to be doing. They know they do it as well as or better than the men around them, and there is no subservience at all in either of those women. In my other 2 series books, that my paranormal series, it kind of is not really an issue because the strongest woman character is an immortal vampire. So it's I get it's your problem. But even she is completely self-actualized. So yeah, I think that the feminist strain is very strong in all of this.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, what makes the crime and mystery genre and its female detectives uniquely suited to interrogate sexism, misogyny, and violence against women in the world? Delia.
Well, I think that it's not that the crime genre, I think the crime genre itself is situated to speak to issues of insider outsider. I think the crime fiction genre is well suited to look at the role of individuals within society. I think that those are questions that I feel drive much of crime fiction and have done from the 19th century. And certainly that's true for private investigator focused or investigator, whether it's a cop or an amateur focused stories, because the question is, how does the major character, the main character's role as an outsider, assist or block the ability to solve the crime? And murder is, of course, the biggest transgression that one can have in a society. That is the taking of someone else's life illegally, involuntarily. And so I think that those questions are automatically raised in the crime genre as it's defined. So I think that the crime genre gives us a lot of room for looking at examining society from the inside out, from talking about power. It gives us a possibility of talking about race and of gender in ways that other kinds of fiction do also, but that it's imperative that we look at some of these questions when we are writing crime fiction.
Laurie?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's kind of two parts to that question. One of them is about the genre, and one of them is about the female detectives. And I mean, the genre itself, the mystery genre is all about consequences. It's all about, you have an act, and it's how it reverberates and how we look at it and how we solve it and how we punish people who did it. And, it's about consequences. And I think that Delia has already mentioned the idea of women traditionally are seen as more attentive to detail around them, simply because we have to be. But I mean, women understand consequences in a way that, that somebody who is, I mean, I'm a tall, large, muscular person, but even I am not comfortable around large, tall, muscular men. And, if even somebody like me is aware that I am vulnerable, then certainly somebody that you write who is anything except an absolutely top-rate, martial artist is going to be aware that they are more vulnerable, and is going to make them see things differently than a male inspector or detective. So, yeah, I think that it's all about consequences and how we see it.
SJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that what Delia said about outsiders is that's the heart of crime fiction, and it's true whether you're talking about private investigators, amateurs, or cops. That the investigator is always an outsider to the crime, and often to the world of crime, and often to the world in general. Even from the beginning, the private eyes of who kind of established the genre were not welcome in a lot of drawing rooms. They were not people anybody wanted to know, and it's true. Miss Marple was kind of batty, according to her neighbors. Everybody liked her and invited her for tea, but she was that crazy lady who sat and knitted and solved crimes. And I think being an outsider is very important in terms of the ability to interrogate pretty much, and the necessity to interrogate pretty much anything and anyone, which is what you need to do. You need to go into crime solving without a preconceived idea. Cops often don't. They go in and they know just who did it. But those aren't the cops we write about. The ones we write about are the ones who are working beside those cops and say, wait, I think you're wrong. I think that's too much of a snap judgment, and women are in our books are more likely to actually go in with a much more open mind and say, this is what happened, and these are the people likely to be involved, and what does it mean? And I think that is crime fiction in general takes that attitude that we are the outside. I mean, if everything were going beautifully, there wouldn't be crime and there wouldn't be crime fiction. It's when society has a little blow up, when something happens, that an investigator has to come in. And crime fiction is, it's as Laurie says, it deals with consequence, but it also deals with immediacy in a way. A novel, a literary novel, which is a term I hate, but a literary novel can go on meandering for months and years. A crime novel can't do that because a crime is something that has to be solved. you can't say, I'll get back to that in a type of legal, because all the clues would have washed away in the rain or whatever. And so there's an immediacy and an outsiderness to the process that puts the genre and women in the genre in a very good position to talk about everything that contributed to crime.
That makes sense. That's a very interesting take on it. And you've actually just answered my next question about women being uniquely placed to engage with issues of violence against women in the stories. But let's go to the genre in general. So a lot has been written and discussed about misogyny and violence against women as an integral part of crime and mystery fiction. Do you think it's possible for the more macho subgenres of crime and mystery, such as noir, for example, to become more feminist and handle violence against women with more nuance if there were more female detectives and female characters included? Delia.
Well, I think I was going to go back to a previous point. I was going to say that one of the strengths, which seems like a weakness at first, of a female investigator is invisibility. Because of the misogyny that of our society and the world that the investigator finds herself in, she's often viewed or not viewed at all.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And this enables the female investigator excuse me, to go places where the male investigator might not. As Laurie mentioned earlier, the Pinkertons who, or maybe it was SJ, I'm sorry, the Pinkerton had to hire female agents because they literally couldn't place people undercover in certain all-female environments. But I think more generally, and the novels often reflect this, people say and reveal things to a Miss Marple or a Nancy Drew or even a V.I. Warshawski. People reveal important clues to those people because they discount them. They don't think that they understand. They don't think they're intelligent enough. They think they're a little dotty to be asking these questions in the first place, or they're too young to understand, in Nancy Drew's case, or soft. And so a lot of the strength of the female investigator is that that invisibility, which becomes a wedge that can be drawn, stuck into the middle of the misogynistic world that they live in. So I think that's something that works to the advantage of us as writers, and obviously to the advantage of the women that we write about as investigators.
Delia, what do you think? Sorry, Laurie.
So did you want, because Delia wasn't really talking about noir. I mean, I'm happy to talk about noir. Do you want?
Yeah, unless Delia, you want to go and talk about, you want to go for the noir
I'm
question.
happy to hear Laurie.
Yeah, go ahead, Laurie.
Let's just talk about Delia. She's much more interesting. No, I mean, I think that the more that women are found in all kinds of fiction, the better, simply because it adds a dimension that is lacking in boy books. But I think, it's always the darker the subgenre, the more apt you are to find that the main role of women is to die. And I don't really have much to say about those books because I don't read them. I don't like that kind of story. I think it's kind of taking shortcuts. It's the sexually based serial killer books, for example. I find them boring because they don't do anything except, kill a lot of people just to sort of, because there's nothing else they can do with the plot. And I think that having women investigators is fine, so long as there's a role for women in the book other than just being a victim. Much more interesting are the ones that where a woman is being held, for example, and finds her own way out. Those are the interesting ones. I've been watching the recent one of Wednesday on Netflix, and I love them because here's this child who is, you know, certain and outcast in all kinds of ways, and she just takes no guff from anyone. She just does her thing and she solves her own problems and goes ahead. And you think, yeah, that's my kind of heroine. I like those.
SJ.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge difference between noir and serial killer, you know, violence against women. But serial killers are very boring to me because they don't have motives; they have compulsions, and it's like having a tick. You know, it's a mental problem. There's nothing to be done except to catch the guy. They are overwhelmingly sexual crimes and sexual criminals, and they keep repeating the same crime on the same type of woman. And they do exist. They don't exist in nearly the profusion that they exist in literature, nor are they brilliant in any way. That is a that is a canard that all goes back to a survey that was done in a prison, where the serial killers who were in the prison scored higher on intelligence tests than the general population. But the general population scored under 100 on IQ tests. So, you know, they were very stupid, and the serial killers were kind of average. But because of, you know, and then you know, Red Dragon came along, and there you had the genius serial killer. But these books depend on violence against women because that is the reality of serial killers. But they also depend on forensic evidence, and to me they're boring. Noir is a whole other thing because noir is a genre where the definition is that someone who has not been good tries just once to be good, to do something good, and fails because the weight of the past is too heavy. And it's traditionally a man who, a bad man who then has decided he's not going to be bad anymore, but he falls for a bad woman who turns him around again. And they both die. I mean, that's traditional. There are many other ways to play it. One of the greatest was an early Megan Abigail Queenpin, where it's classic noir, but the gender roles are reversed. And there are many ways to do that. There are many ways to tell that story of trying to reach for something good and it being essentially too late, and so you fail. There are many ways to tell that story that don't involve violence against women. And I think the more the genre that I think will never change, but doesn't really involve violence against women, it just involves lots of boys, is the international thriller. They're running around, everybody killing each other, flying from helicopters and stuff like that. You know, this is boys' own book. This is for 9 to 12-year-olds, and the fact that they're grown-ups doesn't matter. Those I don't think I'm not sure there's any place for feminism in those, although there is definitely a place for the female agent who has all the attributes of the male agent, and they go swinging together from the helicopter and whatever. But those aren't people anyway. Those are cardboard characters that you can watch enjoy themselves, you know, while they save the world. So the actual other subgenres are all amenable to the incursions of and the expansion of the subgenre by women. And I think that the necessity of violence against women in almost all crime fiction is fading fast.
I like how you described them as books for boys.
You know, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But they are not books for grown people. And I have to, my disclaimer here is that my mother used to love Clive Cussler. She thought he was the greatest thing ever because he was so clever. And he is clever. But they are books for boys and tomboys. My mother was a lot like me.
Yeah.
Oh, her.
I suppose you're right. It's kind of, I called it mindless entertainment. They're fun to read, but they don't really give you much.
Yeah, they're potato chips. And there's nothing.
Yeah, potatoes, yeah. All right. So female detectives often operate in patriarchal systems that marginalize them, police departments, legal institutions, even domestic spaces. How do these characters reflect or resist real-world power structures and challenge institutional norms? Delia.
Well, I think certainly in my books and probably all the books that are represented by authors here on our panel, the very fact that the investigator is female is a challenge to that hierarchy, to the assumptions of the power structure, whether it's a political power structure, the legal power structure, the police power structure, in an education institution, doesn't really matter. I think the fact that the investigator is a woman is in itself a challenge. And then the question is, what are the outcomes of that? What are the consequences, as Laurie pointed out in the beginning? And I think that we are able, not simply by, but because we put a woman at the center of the story instead of on the periphery as either the assistant or the sidekick or the victim, or the weeping mother who needs to get her child rescued, by putting the woman at the center of the story, we have altered the story right from the get-go. And then if we are honest to the consequences of that alteration, then we will play it out in ways that make the stories very, very interesting. Because as Laurie was pointing out, that size is an issue. Size matters. And for instance, I have also decided that for my characters, some of the things that I will twist away from the classic private eye novel, my lead character she drives a car, but not a fancy car. She does not drink. She has given up alcohol for personal reasons. Of course, she falls off the wagon once, but she's not driven by that kind of a compulsion. And on the other hand, she is a sexually lively and engaged middle-aged woman who is not afraid of her own desires and wishes to fulfill them, and does so from the very first page of the first book. So I think that by setting a woman at the heart of the story, we have the opportunity to turn upside down a lot of the tropes and assumptions of these genres and subgenres that we are here talking about. And so I think that makes actually for the reader a very exciting new experience. We're looking at things through different eyes. And the consequences of having a woman investigating means that she demands different kinds of justice, I think, than a man might demand in similar situations.
Yeah, that's right. Laurie.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought about how I think most of us think of a female investigator who's going into the patriarchal society. For example, I write the one character, Mary Russell, goes into the most patriarchal situation imaginable in that she comes face to face with Sherlock Holmes, which Victorian male detective, you can't get much more patriarchal than that. And because she insults him and gets the better of him, and it obviously catches his attention, so it rebalances things from the get-go. And the one that I'm working on now is set in the San Francisco Police Department, and that too, the character is dealing with people who are set in their ways, and she is definitely not set in her ways. But the idea of a middle-aged woman is really, it adds this other dimension to it, doesn't it? Because we're so accustomed to seeing the heroines of crime novels as being young women, and to find that I mean, it's like the Mrs. I used to love the Mrs. Polifax series, where you have this woman who's retired and she's widowed and she has nothing better to do, so she becomes a spy and works for the CIA, and you think, yay, Mrs. Polifax works for me. But I think in any situation that you're dealing with, one of the things that your character has to be, I mean, just speaking as a writer, they have to be an outsider in some way. Because if you have somebody who's just, a family woman, and she's so happy and well balanced, and she has plenty of money, and she does detecting on the side, and it's all, you think, where's the tension in here? So she has to either be, orphaned or abandoned in some way, or working against people who should be supporting her in all ways. There's a lot of ways to play with tension that surrounds your character and that they have to overcome.
SJ.
Yeah, I think that the idea that women are in these jobs is still a little bit eyebrow raising for people. I think they get over it pretty fast, but I think that when you get the knock on the door and you open it and there's a woman with a badge saying, "I'm from the NYPD, can we talk?" Your first reaction is, "You are?" And then, okay, that's, yeah. But I think that is what a woman investigator has to do is fight the patriarchy on both sides. On the side, on when you go out and investigate, people are like, let me speak to your boss, let me speak to the real detective. And on the other hand, when you get back, your boss says, I am the boss, I am the real detective. So that a woman has to fight, not to, as Laurie says, people who would be expected to be supporting her. And in Lydia Chin's case, it's also her family. Two of her brothers are in favor of her career, the other two are against it, and her mother hates it, and therefore hates her partner, Bill Smith, because he, according to her mother, got her into it. It's not what happened, but it couldn't be that a good Chinese daughter like Lydia would come up with this idea on her own. So that it must have been him. So that you are fighting, but you're used to it. We are as girls either totally defeated by the time we're 10, or we're used to the fight. And these investigators are all used to the fight. Mary Russell was, had a perfectly lovely life until her early adolescence, and then all of a sudden, complete catastrophe. And she found a way to live with it. And so by the time she met Sherlock Holmes, she wasn't going to put up with any crap from anybody, even if he was Sherlock Holmes. And I think that is true of women investigators anyway. It's true of all the women cops I know, and God knows it's true of the women firefighters. It's true of all the women in largely male societies. And so I don't think it's not any harder to juggle all those things than it is to just juggle one.
Which brings me nicely to the next question. Do you think reading about female detectives who successfully take on and subvert such patriarchal structures could serve as a catalyst for activism to end sexism, misogyny, and violence against women? Delia.
I don't think that reading these books prompts anyone to take political action, no. But I think it does, I hope, inspire the readers value the choices they make in their own lives, and that they see, yeah, I could be a little like Vandy Myrick. I could stand up, or I could hope that there's someone in my community who's like her, who stands up for people who are underrepresented, people who don't have a voice in our community. I think that, yes, I think that can be a fulfilling part of reading that. But no, would they join a feminist movement because of reading the book? No, I don't see that.
All right. Laurie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I think fiction has a role in societal change. Yeah. I think that it encourages us to step into other shoes, to think of other people. I mean, I'm so happy to see a lot of, when I was young, mystery novels were either set in an English village or they were set in New York, LA, or Chicago. And that was and they were all men, mostly men. But now you have voices from all over, and it enables the reader to be aware that, there's people in all parts of the world. You see, these lovely books that are coming out, from Africa. And who would have thought 20 years ago that you'd have, books like Oyinka and Braithwaite's one about my sister, the serial killer. I mean, who would have imagined that would be everywhere when it came out, and not just some little niche publisher that you find in one small corner of the biggest bookstore? I mean, it's just such a joy to see a variety. The word, diversity is perhaps overly weighted in current society, but this hugely diverse flavor of crime fiction that has blossomed over the last generation, I think, includes the idea that women do stuff. And I think that's, I'm firmly convinced that fiction has a role in long-term change, because it makes people sit and think, oh, okay,
Women can do stuff. SJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the role of fiction is more long-term. It's more undergirding. But I also, to Laura's point, when I started writing about Lydia Chin, I would do bookstore events and such, and people would say to me, but when you go to Chinatown, how do you know where to go and what things are and what the things that are being sold, what to order at a restaurant? I mean, these were New Yorkers who were afraid to go below Canal Street because it was exotic territory. And I said, well, you go into the store, and if you don't know what something is, you ask, and if they tell you something and you don't understand what they said, you don't buy it. But this is not, peculiar. This is not different. And I think that's what, when you read these, the Precious Ramatswe, you read about Botswana and you think, oh, she's just doing in Botswana what we do here. Now it's a little different. They have different kinds of stores and different kinds of food, but it's the same stuff. It's people doing stuff,
Yeah.
And I think that I used to think that fiction could change the world, and specifically crime fiction. And I think it's a lot bigger flywheel than I thought. But when I was young, but I do think that there are two ways that we can help change the world, and one is for people just to read about people like Vandy Myrick and say, oh, wait, that's a person. I didn't know there were people like that. Now I do. And for people who are out there fighting to come back and say, oh, I'm going to read this dumb book about these two Chinese guys in London in 1924, and I'm going to feel better in the morning, and I'm going to go back out and fight again. that I think works also. So if
Yeah.
we can help get people through the night, that is kind of all I need right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah. Okay, so we've been talking about characters, but let's go to tips and recommendations for writing female detectives. So one of the ways in which mystery crime authors can help with changing patriarchal culture that normalizes violence against women now and in the years to come is to write stories that handle the issue appropriately. And that means including more female characters such as detectives that are complex and compelling. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of storytelling for crime and mystery authors who would like to write better female detectives, include feminist issues and ideas in their work, and tackle the issue of violence against women more adroitly in their stories. What advice would you give to emerging crime and mystery writers who want to center women in their crime stories, not just as survivors or symbols, but as female detectives and who are agents of their own narrative and of justice? Do you think?
Well, I think you used the right word. That's agency. And I think the other key element is a range of characters. I think if you have one woman in your story, even if that's the central woman, you're not going to tell a story that is going to be authentic, that's going to be compelling, that's going to be interesting, frankly. I think you need a range of characters, and even within the subcategories, such as a range of gay characters, a range of women characters, a range of people of various ethnicities. I think that a range of people with different kinds of socioeconomic and linguistic and national backgrounds. I think once you bring to your the world of your novel not just a single individual who carries the weight of an entire class of people, an entire kind of person, that then you have a better chance of writing, I think, a successful and interesting story. So that would be the first thing I would say is don't make the one woman be the all and be all and end all of womanhood in your story. It's not true in real life, and it certainly can't be true in your story because it, first of all, won't be very interesting. And it gives you more range. There can be a woman who is a femme fatale and who uses her sexuality to absolutely destroy everyone around her, as the Megan Abbott book that you the Queen Pin is so wonderfully evocative of. That's fair, and you can also have another woman who's doing the opposite in your story. And I think that to show that range of the female experience, of the person of color's experience, I think that's what's compelling about any story that's written.
That's a good point. Laurie?
Yeah, I think that you always have to step back and ask, are all these characters, do all these characters look just like me? And I think, I mean, always with my first draft, none of the characters are really developed. You don't quite know what they look like or where they come from or any of that stuff. But I think the purpose of the rewrite is to make to encourage the reader to think of the richness of the society that you're writing about. And when you look at the characters, you need to think, is there a reason why they have to be X? You know, does this cop have to be a middle-aged, chubby white man? You know, is there any reason why I can't make them something else? So, you know, the idea of really finding the dimension of the characters. Now, I will, and true confession time, I will say that I have very few of my villains are women. There are some, but I freely admit that I have a loss when it comes to writing a villainous woman. So that's perhaps not advice I can give to people other than see if you can find a villainous woman in there somewhere.
Right.
And yet we all have villainous women in our lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my one piece of advice would be: you're writing about real people. You're writing about, or at least you want the world to think you're writing about real people. You're not writing about symbols. You're not writing about the woman cop. You're writing about a woman who is the and the cop, and so on and so on. We're doing True Confessions. When I wrote Family Business, I was having trouble with one of the characters, and I was talking to a couple of friends of mine who've been very helpful in a couple of books. And one of them said, I want to be a character in this book. And I said, all right, I'll make you a cop. And I did, and I got him shot at the end because he wanted to get shot. And then I had to make the other one a criminal, and she was a woman friend of mine. So I figured, well, this is not a huge role. I don't outline, so I didn't really know what was coming, but I gave her the role I had for a man. That was not going to be a big deal. Boy, did that book come alive, and boy, did she just take over. And she turned into a huge major character because she was a woman doing this in this situation where a woman would never have been found. So she had to be a hell of a woman to get there. And that kind of thing can really help if you make a character something you might not expect. A woman, a person of color, a gay person, an older person, a very young person, something that would not be likely to come to mind when you think of that character. And you think, okay, well, how did this person then get into this position? Well, this could have happened and that could have happened, and then there goes your book. And that works whether you outline or not. If you outline, you just say to yourself, the carriage driver is a woman. Oh, well, then why? Is she supporting her entire extended family of 18 people? I mean, and so on and so on. So it helps as a writer to have things going on that you didn't expect, because it will force you to be creative in your approach to the book.
Okay, that's good advice all around. More questions. What are the challenges of incorporating feminist ideas into crime and mystery novels? And what would you recommend to authors who wish to do so without sounding prescriptive? Delia.
It's interesting. I was reading, asked by an author to read part of her book, and she had a very didactic character who was set in the 1910s, and this person happened. The character was, I guess, a socialist of some kind or an anarchist or whatever, and my friend wanted to include several dialogue pieces that were very didactic. It read like a speech by somebody and not necessarily by an actual person, although she'd taken the language literally from pamphlets and brochures of the time. And what I told her to do was, don't dilute it, let the characters speak that way, but then have the characters self-consciously acknowledge that that's how they sound, that they are talking to a friend, but they sound like they're giving a speech. I think if you, the author, admit that what you're doing is polemics, it's okay. I think if you are not conscious of you're doing it, or you don't show that you're conscious, then I think the reader is taken out of the story. And that's the last thing you want. The only thing you really, really, really want from any piece of writing is that you, the reader, are so immersed in the writing that you forget you are reading a book. And if you do anything as an author that takes the reader out of it, that is destroyed the purpose of your book. And that includes using rhetorical devices that end up sounding like preaching. That is not effective. I think you most effectively present feminist ideas through characters and their behaviors and their movement through the world that you've created, not by overt expressions of feminist language or feminist philosophy. I think that takes any reader, whether a reader is a committed feminist or not, it takes them out of the story. They're not coming to your story to read a feminist essay. They do that when they go to read a feminist essay. They're coming to your story to be taken away, taken out. You can make your message come through, but it has to come through in the dialogue, in the action of your characters. And it has to be realistic and authentic to the characters in the world that you have set up. Otherwise, you lose your purpose and you lose your readers.
Yeah. All right. Good advice. Laurie.
And also matter of fact. I mean, I think that, and again, this is one of those areas where it's probably the job of the rewrite to look at, is my research showing here? Is my attempt at illustrating their political opinions showing here? Or is this something that somebody who simply believes that is going to say? I mean, it's sort of like, I remember early on, I think it was the second of the Kate Martinelli books, which was places it back in the mid 90s. I was doing an event and a couple of cops came in. And one of them said that she had just come off duty and she couldn't read the book because every time she started it, she felt like she was on duty. And I thought that it was amazing because I didn't write much detail about the cop's life in that book, just enough so that it reflected where she was and what she was doing and, you know, the daily life of in the Haight-Ashbury, what she would see. But taking stuff out is often much more effective in putting you in those shoes than putting in all the detail. I mean, the temptation, especially for a beginning writer, is to put in all the detail. You've got the research, you know all the names, you stick all the stuff in there. But you then have to think, okay, if I've been on the job for 20 years, am I going to think that way? Or am I going to just sort of remove all those details and just get to the essence of it? And I think that that's the same with anything about, you know, whether it's feminism or whether it's about what your people are doing in there. It's to make it seem so matter of fact for that character that they don't think about the fact that, you know, I mean, in Delia's case, it would be, or her friend's case, it would be, yes, they think of it as a speech because their life is so full of speeches. Their everyday conversation sounds like speeches, but they're aware of that. So, yeah.
SJ.
Yeah, I think in order to display feminism, to display anti-violence attitudes, and all, it's all about the actions. It's all about what people do and how they do it. And your reader can see them as people go through the book, that when this happens, they do this. They don't make speech about it unless they have to make a speech about it, unless that's part of what's going on. But generally, they respond this way to that, and they cause this to happen to prevent that from happening, and so on. So it's all, but that's generally true of the kind of writing you want to do anyway, is that you want the story to be told through what the characters are doing and what they're saying, not through what the author thinks and wants to get across to the reader through the characters. The character is not in the book for the convenience of the author. The character is in the book because that's where they live. And it's your job, the author's job, to introduce them to the reader and get out of the way.
Okay. That's great advice from all three of you. All right, so our final question. What crime and mystery novels and series would you recommend that aspiring writers read to see examples of female detective leads and feminist ideas being handled well? I will go to Delia first.
I like the Kinsey Milhone as a detective. I like V.I. Warshawski as a detective. Who am I thinking? Stephanie Plum, who is not so much a detective as she is, what is she? She's a bail bonds person in New Jersey. Go New Jersey. And I think that those stories give, I would say Cheryl Head writes wonderful stories, contemporary detective private eye stories based in Detroit with a lesbian African-American woman who runs her own agency, detective agency, Cheryl Head. I think Tracy Clark writes wonderful, both a private eye series, and now she's working a female cop series based in Chicago. So Tracy Clark is definitely someone that I would recommend to anybody wanting to know more about female detectives and female writers writing female detectives.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to recommend books when you don't know your reader, isn't it?
Yes.
I kind of think that if you love the cozier, more traditional type of mysteries, go through the nomination lists over the last few years of Malice Domestic. Malice Domestic is a conference every year in the springtime, and they're all cozy all the time. So take a look at those and see, because they're fan awards, and it's people who love the books, they show up there. If you're looking for something that's more, more mystery oriented, look at the nomination lists for BoucherCon, the conference named after Anthony Boucher, BoucherCon. They give the Anthonys every year, and they, SJ won it this year. Yay, SJ! I was nominated, but there's 5 names there that give you a place to start. Pick the women out of there, and go from there. Similarly, the Edgars, Mystery Writers of America, it's a slightly different kind of list than a fan award, but you have some excellent, especially with their new writers. I mean, the people that show up on their new writers nominations tend to be people who are just starting a really interesting career. So, I would recommend feeling your way around with those.
All right, SJ.
I would recommend that people read Laurie and Delia.
Of course.
And SJ.
And SJ.
And I think that you could do a lot worse than go back and read Miss Marple. I think that Agatha Christie is vastly underrated for her understanding of motive. Her characters have some extraordinary motives. A lot of the characters are types rather than fully fleshed, but they're fleshed enough that the motives can be really knockouts, and people don't give her enough credit for that. So I would look at that. I would Cheryl Head. I agree. Barbara Neely, who was the first to take this idea that women can be underestimated and invisible. Her detective was a black maid, and nobody ever saw her anywhere. And that was a great thing. So that I would look at those. If you want one of those 9 to 12-year-old boy adventure books for girls, I mean, these are women's books, but it's what they are. Tori Eldridge, her ninja books. it's that character, that wild, never fails superhero character who also has a mother and a father and a grandfather and all that kind of, and there are a lot of women. I just read, I'm going to mention a man. Oh no, Rob Hustler.
Yes.
Come on, what's the name of that first book?
The Case of the Maid, the Missing Maid.
Missing Maid, yes, The Missing Maid. The character is a brand new detective in 1900s Chicago, a woman who has just been hired and really wants to make a go of this job. She's a lesbian, but she, at the beginning of the book, doesn't really even know that about herself. And it's a terrific character, and it's a very clear kind of feminist stance on how a woman like that would conduct herself in Chicago in the 1910s. And it's completely fascinating. So that there are lots of books out there. I would add to Laurie's list The Shameless, which is the Private Eye Award. Yep. Pick the women out of there. Like, for example, Delia, who just won it Best Novel this year. Just a couple of days ago, she won it for last year's book. So look for the nominees in each category that you like, the categories that you like, and pick out the women writers, and Rob Osler. The women and Rob Osler. Because there are really some terrific women being written that you can really learn a lot from as a writer. As I do with these guys.
Of course, all three of you. All right, so thank you. That brings us to the end of our session. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but basically, I think our discussion covered everything that we wanted to talk about. Thank you for your amazing answers and sharing your perspective with us. So now for everybody watching, in case you missed it, besides their time here today, Delia, Laurie, and SJ have generously donated some exclusive goodies to the stash of swag we have set up on our Really Up fundraising page. So I'm just going to go through them again quickly. So Delia Pitts is giving away 3 different goodies. First is the Death of an Ex bundle for US donors only. It contains a signed and personalized, signed and personalized hardcover edition of Death of an Ex, plus 1 Death of an Ex bookmark. And she is also giving away a 45-minute Zoom call to be claimed by 1 Read for Pixels donor. And Delia will be happy to chat with you about writing, publishing, and books with you, an individual donor or a group. And she's also giving us a crime and mystery critique bundle. So this is 1 critique bundle for either a single author or a writing pair working on an English language work in the mystery or crime genre. And she will critique the first 50 pages or the first 3 chapters of your work in progress, followed up by a 30-minute Zoom video chat where you can talk to her about her feedback. And there's just one of this going. So Laurie has given us 4 things. First is the Knave of Diamonds bundles for US donors only, and these contain signed and personalized hardcover edition of a Knave of Diamonds and 2 exclusive 4x6-inch Knave of Diamonds art prints and a Beekeeper's Apprentice bookmark. And there are 3 of these available: 2 UK edition bundles and 1 US edition bundle. And there they are. And, so one of those could be yours. And Laurie is also giving away 2 Zoom chats, 1 60-minute Zoom call with a group and 1 30-minute Zoom call with an individual donor. And SJ has 2 goodies. First is a bundle comprising a signed and personalized hardcover edition of The Murder of Mr. Ma. Yay! That's the one that won. And 1 signed and personalized hardcover edition of The Railway Conspiracy, and 1 signed and customized note from one of the characters in the book. And SJ also has a 60-minute Zoom call with you, and this is for donors worldwide. And SJ will can talk to you about publishing and books with you or your group. And she's a really good writing coach, so hurry up and get donate to get that one. And finally,
and Anushi, can I just ask,
yes.
where do people go to bid on these things? Maybe you should mention, because it's not obvious.
Yeah, so it's all up on our Rally Up fundraising page. So all the list of all the stuff is there by author. So it's not an auction. You just go and see what you want to get and just get it. And the link is being shared in our chat box right now, and I'll share a slide later to show you where you can go. So the final thing that I wanted to mention is the mystery book boxes that Laurie has generously arranged for her UK and US publishers to give to us. First is the Ellison and Busby, Laurie's UK publishers are offering one mystery book box for a donor in the UK, and Penguin Random House, which is Laurie's US publishers, are offering 2 mystery books for donors in the US. And there are also plenty more author goodies. So if you go to Rally Up, you can see stuff from Chitra Banerjee, Deva Karuni, Jennifer Estep, Mick Cabot, Rachel Harrison, Richard Kadri, and more. Actually, Mick Cabot's goodie just went today. So we've raised $2,765 towards a $5,000 goal so far. Thanks. So please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October this year. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. So let me share these slides. There you go. So you can go to our Rally Up page. It's tinyurl.com, R4P, Rally Up 2025. The link is in the chat box right now. And if you want to find out more about Read for Pixels, all the other authors we have coming up on the list, go to our Read for Pixels page. The link is also in the chat box right now. And we have more news. So if you're interested in feminist and horror poetry, you might want to get your hands on a copy of our award-winning poetry collection, Under Our Eye. It was published in partnership with Black Spot Books. You can either get the paperback or ebook edition from all major booksellers worldwide or find it on Black Spot Books' website. The collection comprises 112 poems by acclaimed female and non-binary poets, opening with Know to Be True by Bram Stoker Award winner Stephanie M. Witovich and the writing assignment by HWA Lifetime Achievement Award winner and SFPA Grandmaster Marge Simon. And it closes on a powerful note with a map of the backyard by Bram Stoker Award nominee Jessica McHugh. Net proceeds of Under Her Eye go towards the Pixel Project's anti-violence against women work. And finally, if you want to find out more about violence against women, what you can do about it, visit our website, www.thepixelproject.net. We have a lot of information, resources, and links. And we also are including a link to the No More directory, where you can get helplines and resources in every country in the world. So I think that link is up in the chat box as well. So, right. So thanks, everybody. And I know we were talking about the awards won by some of our panelists today, but maybe Delia and SJ, you want to tell people exactly what the award was and what you won it for.
SJ, go ahead.
All right. What I won for where to go? The Murder of Mr. Ma, which was co-written with John Shenyan Ni. We won the Anthony Award for Best Historical Novel.
And they beat me.
I beat Laurie King. I never thought it would happen.
I did.
I think Laurie stuffed the ballot box, actually.
Yeah.
I love your book.
I did too.
So that's
And
what that
Delia?
Yes, and I was thrilled to win for Trouble in Queenstown, which is the first Vandy Myrick story or book of the Seamus Award for Best Private Eye Novel for 2024. And that was also awarded last week at BoucherCon, and very excited to win that one.
Yay,
Awarded by the
congratulations.
Private Eye Writers of America is the association that awards that, and I know SJ has won several of Seamus Awards over the years, and I was glad to get one.
I have been around since dirt. So
So go and get those books, everyone who's watching. And actually, one of these award-winning books is in one of the bundles. So yeah, go and check it out on our Rally Up fundraising page. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much, ladies, for being with us today and sharing and spending your time with us. I will say thank you everyone for watching. Good morning, good night, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and goodbye.
Thank you. Good night.